How have court cases changed employment contract enforceability? Imagine signing a contract that could decide your job security or how disputes are resolved. Over time, court decisions have shaped what makes employment contracts valid and fair. These rulings influence both written agreements and what's implied by conduct or policies. An employment contract is a legal promise between an employer and employee. It can be written, spoken, or based on how the employer acts. Written contracts usually spell out job duties, pay, and how to handle disagreements. Courts tend to enforce these contracts based on standard contract rules, but employment laws add extra protections for workers. Courts have recognized that even if there's no formal written agreement, an implied contract might exist. For example, if a company's employee handbook says you'll only be fired for good cause, courts might see that as an implied promise. But whether these implied terms are enforceable depends on where you work and the specific facts of each case. One major change in employment law involves arbitration agreements. These are clauses in contracts that say disputes will be settled through private arbitration instead of court. Courts, especially in the United States, have upheld these agreements under the Federal Arbitration Act. This means many employment disputes now go to arbitration, which is usually faster and less formal. However, courts also set limits. If an arbitration agreement stops employees from exercising their legal rights under laws like anti-discrimination statutes, it might be invalid. Agreements that requiring employees to pay high arbitration fees or limit their ability to see evidence can also be struck down. If part of an agreement is unfair or illegal, courts might refuse to enforce the whole thing. Another important development concerns class and collective action waivers. These clauses prevent employees from banding together to sue as a group. Initially, some courts said these waivers violated workers' rights to concerted activity. But the Supreme Court later ruled that the Federal Arbitration Act requires enforcement of these waivers, making it harder for employees to file group lawsuits. Courts also review employment contracts for fairness using the doctrine of unconscionability. If a contract is extremely one-sided or oppressive, a court can refuse to enforce it. For instance, a non-compete clause that lasts too long or covers too large an area might be invalid. Similarly, arbitration agreements that make employees pay excessive fees or limit their access to evidence might be deemed unfair. For employers, these court rulings mean that clear, fair written contracts are more likely to be enforced. Including arbitration clauses and class action waivers can be beneficial, but they must be drafted carefully. For employees, signing an employment contract can have big effects on their legal rights. It's wise to review contracts thoroughly and seek legal advice if something seems unfair or unclear. Overall, court decisions have made employment contracts more central to the employment relationship. They ensure that contracts are enforceable as long as they are clear, fair, and do not violate workers' rights. These changes help balance the power between employers and employees, making sure contracts serve both sides fairly.